Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse. It's April 1st, 2026. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. For those of you new to Office Hours, this is where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community. Plus, there's a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. Now, real quick, before we get started, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse has developed the ultimate infrastructure as code framework. We call it Atmos. If you haven't heard about it, and you're running Terraform or OpenTofu, you should check it out. Go to atmos.tools. A quick note on how you can get the most out of today's session. The format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, and you can ask questions. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools, like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. And for those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can join us at cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, cloudposse.com/office hours, where you can register and get an invite to our weekly call. I do have one small ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You can find all the recordings at youtube.com/cloudposse. So let's get started. First thing, if you're like us, you woke up this morning to a welcome email, hello email from AWS that they're sunsetting a service. It's called AppRunner. Um, AppRunner was kind of like Amazon's attempt at creating a Vercel-like experience, if one can call it that, on AWS. Basically, a simpler way to deploy apps. We use a service called Runzon for hosting our self-hosted runners. We recommend that for all of our customers as well. Runzon is kind of affected by it. Now, AWS is not shutting down AppRunner right away. They're just stopping new registrations. And then they'll probably announce, 6 months to a year from now, the actual shutdown of that service. There had been some chatter about this happening about a month ago, but I had totally missed it. And then it seemed like it got a temporary reprieve or something. But anyway, seems like it's out. And if you are using Runzon, keep posted. There is a active discussion on this in the repo for Runzon. There's a conversation also going on in their Slack community that is free for anyone to join if you want to chime in. They're basically looking at maybe introducing Lambda, single function Lambdas, which support TLS endpoints, or maybe using ECS Express. But the downside is ECS Express is a lot more expensive than using AppRunner. And AppRunner was a really economical solution, especially when you want to scale down to zero. I think Lambda functions wouldn't be a bad alternative. The yeah. Any questions or comments on AppRunner?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, I never used the ser I wanted to like AppRunner. I really, really, really wanted to
Yeah.
enjoy using AppRunner. Every time I looked at it, it never fit my use case. It was either when it first came out, it didn't have the integrations I needed for VPCs. There were some other
Yeah.
things like maybe parameter store or secrets manager. There's just like something I couldn't do that I needed to do,
Yeah.
on a regular basis. So I kind of put it on a shelf, went to
And,
ECS.
and
Then when,
limited instance types and
yeah,
sizes. I never understood, like, why do you artificially hamstring yourself?
yeah, yeah. And then when I considered it again later, the deployment times were hecka slow. They were just like it took so long to get something up and running. And long is relative. Say if it was anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, that
Yeah.
was still too long for what I needed to have happen in an event-based system.
Yeah.
So in that time, I went with Lambda because Lambda was just like super quick. Event. Even if I get some sort of cold start, it still was negligible for my needs. So whatever, and it worked
Are
in
you
less than a second or two.
are you using Lambda function URLs at all, or?
Yes. And so after that, when they finally came out with function URLs, that was even better because then I didn't need an API gateway or anything like
Yeah.
that. I could just point directly at the Lambda. Permissions on that changed October of last year, so that kind of threw a wrench in a couple things. But okay, work through that. And then everything's good. But looking at the alternative to this, when they say, okay, use ECS Express, which I just started reading about, and it requires a load balancer, I'm like, well, there goes your function URL. Basically, there goes your URL directly pointed at your app runner
Yeah.
function or whatever. And so in the even before I learned about that, the last stopgap that I used to prevent me from using App Runner was Cloud Runner or GCP Cloud Run because they literally scaled to zero. I understand the App Runner
Yeah.
may scale down to you don't pay for CPU if it's not actively running, but it's not
Yeah.
truly scaled to zero if I understand correctly. Whereas Cloud Run was literally it turned off if you weren't getting any requests, and that totally made the difference for my use cases. So I really, really, really wanted to like enjoy using App Runner, and it just never fit. So
I think
I'm
it was
not.
their response to Google's Cloud
Yes.
Run, just obviously not as effective. And
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that it's going. I mean, if there's another 100 people like me out there in the world, and there's probably more than that, then I'm not surprised to see them saying, yeah, we're not gonna, continue this. So I mean, for my use case, I'm not sad to see it go because I didn't rely on it, but at the same
yeah,
time, I'm sad to see it go because it would have been nice to have something that's comparable to these other services inside AWS so I can wrap Terraform around it. I can IAM it. I can do all this other kind of stuff with all
yeah.
my other AWS services that I'm using. So that's the end of my rant.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's symbolic to me. Like it wasn't that we used it too much aside from runs on. It was more like at least it showed that they had were investing in maybe doing something
Yeah,
to improve the DX on at that level. And it's just like I don't know the way Amazon is set up and tooled, or like their philosophy when it comes to infrastructure makes that almost, I guess, untenable or impossible. So maybe a good segue then would be to this that came out, which totally caught me by surprise. And when I read about it a little bit more this morning, I had a different take on it, and I thought it was kind of interesting if it's accurate or not. So we are big proponents of Vercel. We really like using Vercel. Vercel is what App Runner should have been, right? To make deployments really easy, and the Vercel CLI to interact with it. If you come from like a Heroku background, Vercel is like the cool kids version of that, but TypeScript based projects, JavaScript projects. I think Python's coming soon. Anyways, Stripe has introduced something called Stripe projects. And with Stripe projects, at first blush, you could say, wait, they created their own Vercel-like platform? And that's how I interpreted it at first. But it's slightly different. And when you look at this and you look at their supported providers, hey, they support Vercel. So clearly they are not a Vercel alternative. Instead, they've done something really interesting. They've created like a meta cloud. And if you think about what's happening in a lot of these cloud environments, if you think about like Cloudflare, first they were CDN only, then they added zero trust, and then they added R2, and then they added, and it keeps going and going and going, workers, etc. Not necessarily in that order. And you see that happening with like HashiCorp. First it was Terraform Cloud, then it became HashiCorp Cloud Platform, then it became Vault Cloud, Packer Cloud, etc. Well, I think all under the umbrella there of HashiCorp Cloud Platform. So we've seen something happening here within individual brands creating their kind of micro clouds or specialized clouds that they have, not a formal like infrastructure as a service cloud of GCP, Azure, AWS, etc. Now, though, they've created something really interesting here, which is a simple CLI and backed by configs that are declarative that lets you stitch together these modern platform as a service offerings like Vercel, like Ingest probably is Ingest on here. No, I don't see that one, but Posthog, Clerk for auth, Neon, and giving you a really pleasant experience for doing so. So I thought that was cool. It looks like it's you have to it's in a beta right now. You got to request access to it. Um, Michael?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the mic again, but this is really, this is the first I'm seeing this, and it's really surprising to me. This is something that I wish I had, man, like 4 or 5 years ago. Um, put a pin in that. I'll come right back to it. I don't see AWS under the list of providers.
Of
That's
course.
that's very unfortunate,
No, that's very,
because
it is the reason why there is no app runner. It is the reason why they're shutting down app runner
yeah,
because AWS cannot build simple services.
yeah. Yeah, that's very disappointing. So the why I wish I would have had something like this 4 or 5 years ago, working with a client, they were using Stripe for billing. They wanted preview environments. And they were first they were doing some funky elastic beanstalk type stuff, and I was helping them move to ECS. Looked at App Runner. I think App Runner might have been out, but again, all the other stuff we need to do didn't work. But the problem was with Stripe, there was no automated way to set up a just like a test account. Everything was very manual, and this looks like maybe they've automated some of that indifferentiated heavy lifting, whatever the AWS people call it.
Yeah.
And it would be so cool to integrate this into a workflow. Somebody pushes their PR, it spins up the app, spins up this test account, and you can actually do end-to-end testing. And then when you merge the stuff in,
Yeah,
tear
yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah, yeah.
down, and the real app starts to live off of the real account. But just creating these sidebar accounts was so difficult that they totally abandoned the idea. They had long-lived uh, preview account. Well, not they're not really previews then. They're just
Yeah.
like QA1, QA2, whatever. And it I mean it worked, but this right here would have been so much more performant and just like keeping things clean to say, hey, we've tested this feature, tear everything down, merge it in, and we're clean. We're good to go. So yeah, I wish I had this like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, you said something there that I was thinking, I maybe this helps move in that direction. And I don't know that everything you said will be available here, but if that is true, that'd be cool. The part I'm anchoring on is where you said previews, like Vercel previews, amazing. Neon
Yeah.
works with Vercel to create branches off your database, amazing. Stripe, I don't know where they're at with that. I know that they have made it easier to kind of clone configurations, but
Mm.
not it still it was pretty manual when we set it up for Cloud Posse. So I think it'd be really interesting if there was almost an open standard, and as all these new kind of specialized services form, like resend for sending emails, like Clerk, etc., if they all had the concept of ephemeral environments built into them, because that's what we need to move at the speed of AI. The underlying services we depend on need to be AI native for that. Examples like we're dealing with is, we have Atmos Pro, it's built and hosted on Vercel. But the challenge we have is like GitHub apps, and we need webhook callbacks. How do you do ephemeral environments with GitHub apps in any practical manner? You can't. So that's one of those, more legacy technologies like GitHub apps that far predate the concept of preview environments. But I hope something like that comes for even GitHub apps. All right. Next up would be so about a week or two ago, we talked about another vibe coded local stack alternative, and that was called Floki. I've heard mixed reviews on that. Here's a new one that came out. Full disclosure, the author has this was trending on Hacker News. The author clearly says that this was entirely vibe coded, so not misrepresenting what is here. But props to a very nice, clean landing page. What it supposedly does is have more or less parity with the underlying services that local stack supported. Local stack is, of course, the OG of local emulated AWS services, not because you're going to run a local cloud, but because you want to enable your developers to develop, you know, native services for AWS on their laptops so that they can interact with things like DynamoDB without cloud credentials and S3 without cloud credentials and so forth, just using the AWS SDK. So this looks pretty interesting to me. I believe it's just a single binary. You can start up. You can also just run it as a Docker container. Yeah. Any feedback on this one? I think it's an interesting, you know, trend we see happening where, you know, I look, I feel empathy on both sides. I run Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is an open source company. Um, we've always had our software under Apache 2, which is a permissive license. Do whatever you want with it. Um, we totally recognize that people fork it, diverge, just copy it, make it their own, whatever. That's fine. Um, we've seen a lot of open source projects that decide to change their license because it's seen as a strategic move, maybe for acquisition purposes, in the case of probably HashiCorp changing their license on all their open source to BSL. We've seen it with Redis, trying to prevent these cloud providers more or less from offering it as a paid service. And I empathize. It's a hard business. Don't go into open source to become a billionaire. Um, there are a few exemptions to that. Um, so what we're seeing now are companies or people clean rooming re-implementations of products like local stack now, kind of neutering the effect of changing the license because now there's just another alternative. There was another announcement over this past week. You've probably seen Claude Code, all their source code leaked. Like not just the prompts, like full on, all Claude Code was leaked through a, a distribution problem. Basically, there's a source map that had the complete source code, and there's some irony in this because the analysis that I read is probably because they're using Bun, and Bun had a published bug that it was leaving these source map zip files lingering around, laying around that had all the code in it. Source maps, if you're not familiar, that's so that when you're serving your application, like a single page application through the browser, it's all obfuscated more or less. It's compiled into a very compact JavaScript file with symbols for everything. And to debug that is impossible. So you have a source map that lets you kind of decode what all those symbols are. And this source map actually included the full Claude Code source. And then where the irony comes is Claude, I think Anthropic bought Bun. So they own the project now that also leaked their source code to the internet. And then because it's April Fool's today, I totally fell for it. There's a Hacker News post or something saying that Anthropic just open source Claude Code. But no, they did not. Why I bring that up is this is another example where now, because that source code is leaked, the first thing everyone is doing is clean rooming a new implementation of Claude Code in Python, in Rust, in you name language here. So you don't need to use the Claude distributed version in TypeScript anymore. All right, that's my soapbox. Anything?
Yeah, I think it's on one hand, well, I mean, lots of comments there. Yeah, don't go into open source if you want to make money. Totally agree with your thoughts on that. You have to have some other love that you can pursue, some other passion that you can pursue that's going to pay your bills, feed your family, keep them alive. Don't count on the software development to do that. That's the first one. Second one, I think it's cool that Claude Code is released because there's so much of the internals that we can see now, like the I did follow the Claude Code map being released, and then it looked like somebody internally also released additional source code. So that just kind of added to, you've got the map, you've got the code, you can do whatever you want to with it. You can build your own, basically build your own Claude Code. So now people are forking and cloning whoever posted it first and building their own Claude Code implementations. That's cool. At the same time, I think it's kind of messed up because that's going to give hackers and bad actors opportunity to put backdoors and all kinds of crazy stuff into
Yeah.
some, like they're not even going to call it cloud code. They're going to call it, whatever you want to call it, plus plus.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like the super cool agent orchestrator. And everybody's going to be
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
man, this is the hot new. They're going to install it. And the next thing you know, we've got a big
Yeah.
debacle on our hands as
Yeah.
far as
Oh my
security
God.
goes. Yeah,
It's
so
the
that's
wild,
that's
wild west.
really the main thing that I'm worried about because well, main thing I'm worried about is just like bad code. And so when I looked at a heavily starred fork of the Cloud Code dump, the first thing that I saw as I looked through it, whatever, like npm install, et cetera, and I'm like, I'm not touching anything that says npm install for a good 2 or 3 weeks after all the last bit of npm stuff happened. So it just gave me pause to say, like, man, this is it's cool, but at the same time, it's scary because who knows what's on your system?
And now my LinkedIn feed is just going to be like 50 new Cloud Code alternative CLIs
Yeah,
announced. Hey, I just open sourced.
yeah.
My next, yeah, it is, it's interesting. Yeah, what's interesting here? What are these locks here? Feature gated. Huh. All right. Let's check the chat here if there was something. Yeah, and then Axios, I forgot to add that. That was just everywhere. Oh my God. Yeah. Definitely held my breath for a little bit, making sure that, that wasn't anywhere. Fortunately, everything was pinned to a much older version. Um, but yeah, so Axios is the de facto library used by every node project, more or less, if it's performing REST-like operations from the browser. Um, it was compromised as part of this whole supply chain fallout, going back to Trivy, and then the subsequent npm repos that got compromised and so forth. Uh, let's see, Michael, have you gone into depth on this one? Is Michael here today? Michael Rosenfeld. No, we don't have Mike here with us. But yeah, Noel, did you look into this one some more? What happened with Axios? Anyways, what I recommend to anyone, if haven't already, if you're using Dependabot, make sure that you have a cooldown period. You don't automatically update to packages that are younger than 2 weeks old, and then do the same in your npm configurations. Do not install packages that are less than 2 weeks old. That gives all the security researchers time to get their PR announcements out first before
This
you the PR announcement.
was like very similar to the Shah Halud. It installs like uh, a backdoor program, except they have Mac and Linux and Windows versions, and then it exfiltrates the secrets. So if you have something like Open Snitch or Little Snitch or whatever, I guess that's the only thing. Um, but yeah, I'm worried about these. This is like
Yeah.
it's no fun.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah,
have a lot more, I think.
a lot more, and it's just going to be snowballing, I think. I can only hope that GitHub is, trying working through ways to reduce the impact of these kinds of changes. They've become kind of the de facto steward of open source. Um, so we really need to see something on their platform to help thwart these things. Um, all right. Next up, cover that. I was when OpenClaw came out, Mac sold out of the Mac Minis, right? Which are similar to a Mac Pro in the sense of the form factor. They're small, but they cost a fraction of the cost of a Mac Pro, but they also have a fraction of the performance and memory. Then you got the bougie guys with their their OpenClaws that were buying fleets of Mac Pros so that they could run local models. And I thought I thought this might be like the new coming for Mac, that their Mac Pros would be used for local models and things like that, given the success we saw in Mac Minis. But they just killed it. I couldn't believe it. So the Mac Pro is no more. I'm guessing in part due to the memory shortages that they're facing, that everyone's facing. Any thoughts on this one? Let's see, there's
Yeah, it's a
something.
bummer.
All right, so that was the Mac Mini, Stripe, source code leak. Yeah, and I mean, anyone could have called this one. Turns out that, yeah, that new app, a White House official iOS app, security nightmare. That points to a WordPress site if that wasn't bad enough. Like, who the heck does WordPress anymore for net new mobile app as the backend? And I believe the company that developed it, it is a Russian application development company. Um, and there were multiple opportunities for just running like random code or something inside the app. So uh, do not try out that new White House app. I thought this was a really interesting post owning the narrative kind of for what's going on here. So Linear is probably one of the best project management software out there today. If you're using Jira, I feel for you. I'm sorry. Hopefully it's gotten better, but Linear was the best thing we did several years ago. Uh, Linear is a modern project management software that lets you create views for everything, super fast, local app, mobile app, integrates with Slack. You don't have to have another subscription for an app that turns Slack requests into tickets and synchronizes them. You can integrate it with multiple Slack teams if you go enterprise. They've just rolled out AI capabilities in the platform, so you can just dictate what you want Linear to do with your tickets and so forth. So it's pretty awesome. And then last week we talked about Paperclip, and I have serious FOMO about Paperclip. And I know John on our team's been using Paperclip, and people who use it, they love it. But the biggest problem with Paperclip is you eat up your Claude tokens in like a couple of hours, even if you're on a Pro Max plan. So Linear came out with this post over the past week or so, just saying issue tracking is dead because like the future of work in software engineering is more about assigning that work probably to an agent. And Linear is accepting that. So they are making product changes now to Linear so that it becomes a more AI native project management software, vis-a-vis things like Paperclip. If you didn't hear about Paperclip on our last office hours, you can check it out. I'll share the link as well. There it is. So yeah, any thoughts on the future of project management? Next was, I skipped this one. So we haven't really talked too much about Atmos Pro. I'll be doing demos of this more and more in office hours. Not going to have a demo today, but for the early adopters out there using Atmos, heads up, we did post a change log now, and we went retroactive about a month or so in terms of development. So if you want to stay on top of all the new things going into Atmos Pro, which is our IAC control plane built on top of Atmos, check it out. It's a GitHub app that you basically install on into your repos, and then you get centralized visibility across all of your repositories that you're running IAC tools. Right now, the focus is with OpenTofu, of course, but Atmos itself supports Ansible, Packer, Helm file, and we'll be adding additional component types. So this becomes a really nice way to streamline, application delivery through GitHub Actions, keeping the developer experience just native inside of GitHub. So check it out. All right, a few more announcements here then. Why don't I jump into, I guess I'll cover that one at the end. So another product update. It's taken us, a little time, I'll admit, but we have updated our EKS cluster component. This is a Terraform root module that we use to manage Kubernetes clusters. We've just updated it with support for EKS auto mode and EKS capabilities. The hope there is that maybe EKS is finally as convenient as GKE with Copilot or Autopilot turned on. Anyone have firsthand experience with both Autopilot and EKS Auto Mode? All right. So yeah, check that out. We have documentation on how to set it up. No migration guide yet. I'd expect a migration guide for moving from the previous version to this in the next coming weeks. We have a couple other updates coming soon to Atmos. So these are merged into main, but we didn't cut the release before our call today. One is that we added now native support for starting and running the MCP servers in Atmos. And the reason for Atmos is because we are using this predominantly with cloud providers. Cloud providers all need authentication. Authentication is a non-trivial thing to solve for multiple cloud providers. Atmos does a really awesome job of handling authentication. So when you run any of these MCPs, Atmos can use now Atmos Auth to authenticate and start them. It'll also handle installation of the MCPs as well. I did a demo last week showing you how you could do it with custom commands. I learned that a team member was already working on a better solution. So this is really cool with Atmos. You configure the MCP servers. It's in the standard place. You know how to manage it in the Atmos configuration. And then you can just start asking questions from Atmos. You can also use it with Cloud Code because we provided a export command. So you run Atmos MCP export. It'll generate your mcp.json file. That's what all the major agentic coding tools use to talk to the MCP. And then that way, when it talks to the MCP, it's vis-a-vis Atmos Auth, which gets your authentication session and credentials, and then runs the underlying MCP server. So it's really awesome for things like, understanding billing, but also Amazon has like 60 or 70 different MCP servers. I know there's a lot of talk that MCP is dead, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I do believe there are other great ways of doing things, but MCP is very effective for, reducing the amount of context required to execute commands and making the tools have to do less work to get the outcomes and answers that you need. So MCP is the way to do that. Any questions on MCP support in Atmos?
I like this. I actually try your example on my own and found AWS config and security hub was super expensive in dev because we didn't put it to be documented daily. So it was a cool thing to find out. Well, something to find out, but a cool fix because of this. The only thing is my issue with this one is I don't know why, but when I run AI in Atmos, it's extremely slow. So I don't use it frequently. Like,
which provider are you using?
I'm using Cloud as well.
Cloud.
Cloud.
Mm.
If I use Cloud directly, like in your example, actually, works
Much
faster.
faster.
Yeah, much faster. It like stopped. I don't know. It gets really stuck on some comps.
Can you post that in the Atmos channel, since I know you're pretty active there? And then tag Andre, and I think that would be good. That we need that feedback, right, to know that that's happening for you.
Yeah, I will try it again today and replicate it. I didn't post it because I was gonna switch to Anthropic. No, what is the other one? Open. I don't know, ChatGPT.
Or Codex. Yeah.
So I was gonna switch that one to see if the issue persisted.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, even if you go that route, you can still benefit from the Atmos MCP subcommand because that'll just make the authentication piece easier.
Yeah, I like that. I will do that one because by the way, when you do this, does like the YAML will respect variables for Atmos? Like, for example, the region, can I send it to
exactly. This is atmos.yaml, and the functions that are supported in atmos.yaml should continue to work.
No, that's not good. Okay.
And what's also really interesting about that is just because I was talking about it today in a customer workshop, one of the things that we do at Cloud Posse, because managing configuration at a certain scale in an organization is challenging, we have in our centralized GitHub repo, it could be any repo, it doesn't have to be this one. We have a folder for Atmos configs, and here's like the Atmos config for Terraform modules. And it has the stub for how to generate the README, for example, from the template. It has the custom commands that we implemented so that all of these commands are available in all of our repositories. And then that's what made it so awesome for us in the open source side of things, because we can just, let me go to like one of our Terraform modules. Here's the Atmos config. We can just import that Atmos config. So like if you've used Renovate Bot or Mergify or things like that, where you can centralize your configs, Atmos lets you do that as well. So take that now with what we did with the MCPs and the Atmos auth, you can centrally manage for your organization all the authentication profiles that you need for a team or the aggregate organization, custom commands that might be helpful for them to use to get up and running, and now the MCP configurations so that you can just run Atmos MCP export, and your infra teams or developers interacting with infrastructure automatically get their MCP configured to use their authentication profile that you also centrally manage and distribute, and just make everything streamlined for developers. It just works out really nice. So
yeah, that's cool. I like this. I will try it.
So let's see. Next, we have just a minor announcement. Aha! I'm really happy you showed up, Charles. You were the one asking about this last week.
I was.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So ask and you shall receive. Um, we looked into it, and it turned out there was no real way to use Atmos auth with also like your ambient credentials, the credentials that just exist in your environment without any configuration. So this has not been released yet. This is merged into main. I don't know what happened. We used to have a little thing here that used to say unreleased, but we're not seeing that show up here right now. But with this, you can now specify an AWS ambient config or a generic ambient one, a kind, and then this should work the way you wanted it to work.
Yeah, this is very cool. Thanks.
So if there's any issues, let me know and we'll promptly address them. All right, let's see what else. Okay, so and then the last thing was that when I went to then go Google what's going on with App Runner, then it turned out that there's this little like, oh, by the way, little service update announcement. We're shutting down 9 services. So if you're using any of these, it's not that they're turning them off on April 30th, but they are shutting them down to new users. Kind of sucks. Wish I would have known that because we just re-implemented Audit Manager using the latest APIs in Terraform. App Runner, right, runs on. They just implemented support for runs on in Terraform for App Runner, and now they're shutting that down, and some other things here. Okay, CloudTrail Lake is shutting down. So that's all that I got. Any other things we should discuss today?
I actually had a question about the GitHub Actions. So the new GitHub Actions are really cool. I was wondering, there's this GitHub Actions that we used to have, or I guess we still have, for updating all the vendoring. Is that still working, or is that moving to also
Yeah.
append?
You're talking about the component updater,
Yeah, exactly.
and I don't know. There
I,
was
I I did a PR for
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
long
yeah,
time
yeah,
ago.
yeah. So yeah. So I appreciate that. And we
Yeah.
accepted the PR, we merged it in. I have a new PR that incorporates your work and some other stuff,
Mm,
but nothing is just that easy because we have
yeah.
because Atmos is so kind of flexible. So
Mhm.
because Atmos supports importing vendor configs from other vendor configs,
Oh yeah,
and
it was
because
before that.
we support comments in the YAML, and because we support component YAML form and so
Mm,
forth, we wanted it to work, preserve formatting while also being able to update versions and do those things.
perfect.
It is so the good news and the bad news. The good news is what you submitted is the foundation for where we want to go with it, and we've been planning to go with it. Uh, it is also why we are not investing too much in the component updater because our whole thesis on automating things in GitHub Actions overall has changed over the last year, which is this whole idea that if the tool itself wasn't designed to run in CI, then it's not CI native. And we want Atmos to be CI native. So I would expect hopefully by, summertime or so, enough will have cleared off our backlog that we can get back to working on that. If you're interested in picking up where I left off, it will
Yeah,
be an iterative process. I wouldn't mind working with you, but that depends if you have the tokens and the time.
yeah. I can do it. I think I can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll reach out to you separately then, and what we can and discuss what we can do on that.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this goes for pretty much anyone who is a avid or regular user of Atmos. If you are interested in taking up some development, or there's some feature that you've been waiting on, or there's just something you want to do related to it, you should reach out to us. We're very accepting of contributors. We have a pretty robust process for reviewing all of that. And separately, if there's a PR that you see and it's not getting merged, it's probably because we need help validating things. So if there's something that you'd like to see in Atmos, you already see a PR for it, also reach out if you can help us validate the functionality of the PR and test it and QA it together with us. All right, so that's what I got here. And in the chat, oh yeah, so somebody was posting about the animated comments for Atmos. We do have those. That is, though, the part that's part of Atmos Pro. So we literally output a graph of the components and their dependencies, and then dispatch. Each one of these is a workflow dispatch. So everything runs entirely inside of your GitHub uh, environment, your own self-hosted runners, and so forth. And then you can track that progress through the PR comment as such. So the way it gets updated is that we do something where every time we receive a webhook back from GitHub that a run has changed status, then we update the comment on GitHub. And GitHub is really nice these days because that comment updates automatically without you refreshing the page or anything. So you literally get this interactive feeling of the PR comment updating. So the actual example would be like in our github.com Cloud Posse examples, and here's a pull request. So here you can see a more advanced example that was also updated in the same way. This is slightly older. We've updated the table here to tell you if there were changes or not. And this is the plan phase. And then if you scroll down here, we can see the apply phase. We can see that these failed actually here. So that's where you would need to go in and investigate. That's all though covered by the dashboard side, and I'll show you guys the dashboard soon. I mean, it's ready. All this is free, public right now. Anyone can go just install Atmos Pro. Go to atmospro.com and you can install it. We're just not doing a media blitz on it right now because we're waiting to get all the docs fully flushed out. But if you're an early adopter and you want to help us validate also the documentation and setting it all up, the docs are here to get it set up. Plus, you can use the example repo that I was sharing there a minute ago. I'll post it in the chat here. Here's the advanced example. All right. Let's see. Any questions we could get answered today? This is an open-ended portion of the show. Feel free to ask questions about anything you've seen here on the show already, or bring any of your own questions.
I have a question about Atmos Pro, actually.
Okay.
What's the pricing gonna be?
I'm going to do the contact sales.
Okay.
Yeah. No, so here's the thing. We're working out on the pricing. We need it to be equitable. We need it to make sense for smaller companies as well as for enterprises, and we want it to be fair across the board. So we have a fair pricing model, I believe, constructed. The pricing is pay per committer seat. So if you've ever used Vercel or Slack or basically any service out there, it's pay per seat. rather than resources under management or successful applies or the number of runners, which is insane because, well, when you build your infrastructure in the way we recommend, you should have a lot of components. So it wouldn't make sense if we charged for like on those dimensions. So we charge based on the number of committers that you have in a given repository.
Cool.
Yeah, Michael said charging for resources under management is diabolical. And it's true. It is crazy because many people pay more for the platform managing those resources than the underlying resources, which is absurd to me.
Yeah, and to that point, there was a article, I think it was in the AWS channel, and I forget who posted it, but they did a comparison of Kubernetes control planes between Amazon GCP and Azure.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and I was just kind of flabbergasted. I've always run either Kubernetes clusters on self-hosted stuff or whatever the case is, some stuff in EKS, but I've never had to manage it, so I'm not worried about the cost per se. But if I ever had to, then yeah, I'm looking at Azure because Azure is zero out of the gate. But once you get up to like, multiple clusters, multiple
Yeah,
teams, multiple environments, et cetera, then you're paying
yeah,
tens of thousands of dollars per month before you even run anything on the infra. So it's like, man, that's kind of crazy to me.
yeah. I think it is crazy. And yeah, I just shared the link if somebody else wants to see the article. It was shared in our AWS channel. Um, it makes me think of something else though that I was reflecting on how I just wish that there was a way that Kubernetes could just be the interface for AWS or the cloud providers as the alternative to their APIs, and not this concept of I have to provision, manage, upgrade, update, or whatever. I want to be I want like CloudFormation where I can just lob the architecture over and it materializes.
Yeah,
So
isn't that OpenStack?
uh I
Or
mean
isn't that something like that though?
OpenStack, I mean, that's self-hosted AWS, right? And that's bare metal. That is the opposite of what I'm talking. Like what I want just literally where I could like curl and throw my architecture to the service and it materializes like that. I don't have to
Yeah.
deal with all the provisioning tools and everything else, right? So I think like the experience of Argo CD, once you have Kubernetes up and running, and once Kubernetes is OPP other people's problems, and once that is in place, then I think Kubernetes is pretty amazing. I want all of that other stuff thrown away so that all we do is just when we want something, we just talk to an API endpoint, and I don't have to manage the API endpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I think I misspoke. I think I was thinking OpenShift.
OpenShift a little bit, but I mean,
Yeah.
OpenShift is like a enterprise pass on top of Kubernetes. It
Yeah.
is, I wouldn't say it's akin to, but it's in. I would say you probably would not be running the cross plane with OpenShift, right?
Mm.
They're solving a similar problem. But both of them have the same problem that you have to manage everything underneath it, and that's what I
Yeah.
want, you know. And I'm saying this as a company who has, we derive most of our revenue by solving everything beneath the Kubernetes cluster. And I still
Yeah.
don't want that to be where we're at today. I just wish it could just be easier. I want it to feel like that projects.dev from Stripe, um, at least for the happy path. Projects.dev was the Stripe thing that we talked about earlier today. That was this thing. Oops, not that. No, projects.dev, this one. Yeah. In OpenShift, I wonder, like, for the longest time, it also required you to run your own like patched Kubernetes. Like you couldn't run it on EKS. I have to assume they have a solution now that works on EKS, but I don't know firsthand. I'd be curious.
Of course, you can always let AWS repackage it and sell it back to you again.
Yeah. All right. Well, wow. I didn't realize we already made it to the end of the hour here on office hours. So thanks, everyone. I enjoyed the conversation, and we will have a recording of this posted to our YouTube channel in a few hours. We also syndicate that as a podcast. So you can go to, actually, I guess I took it off from here, but you can go to cloudposse.com/podcast, and you can listen to it however you listen to podcasts as well. If you haven't joined our Slack community, that's where we source a lot of this information. It's a great place to ask questions. Very friendly place. Go to cloudposse.com/Slack. And our newsletter should be coming out, I guess, next week or so. We try and send that monthly. And if you are interested in commercial support, it is how we fund our open source ecosystem. We have different packages that fit your size and budget. So go to cloudposse.com/support for that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.